In this video, we're going to look at some of the more common disorders of the nervous system. So the first thing we'll look at is Alzheimer's disease, and it's the most common cause of dementia. And signs of Alzheimer's can appear before the age of 50, but the condition is usually seen in individuals over about 65. So it's a neurodegenerative disease where an individual initially suffers memory loss and eventually becomes more and more disoriented as far as not knowing time of day or day of week, or not recognizing people anymore. Uh, Persons with this condition, they have abnormal neurons in the brain that contain plaques with the protein beta amyloid, and they seem to develop these neurofibrillary tangles in the axons due to an abnormal protein which has been called tau. The treatment includes medications that hopefully will ease some of the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. However, none of these have proven to be that effective. When a person begins to demonstrate symptoms of it, then sometimes these medications can perhaps um, slow the development of the condition, but none have really been that successful at preventing the further development of the disease. Parkinson's disease, the symptoms include a gradual loss of motor control, and a person exhibits involuntary tremors and muscular rigidity. And what happens is the basal nuclei, they function improperly because of degeneration of neurons in the brain that release the neurotransmitter dopamine. So it results in excessive excitatory signals that lead to Parkinson's disease symptoms. And treatment involves alleviating symptoms with L-DOPA. That's a chemical that can be converted to dopamine in the body. So dopamine is not given directly since it cannot actually cross the blood-brain barrier. So the capillaries in the brain, they're impermeable to dopamine. Then multiple sclerosis. This is probably the most common neurological disease that afflicts young adults, and its cause is still unknown. However, it's believed to be an autoimmune disease in which the patient's own white blood cells, they attack the myelin, the oligodendrocytes, and the neurons of the central nervous system. And symptoms include fatigue, vision problems, limb weakness and pain, numbness and tingling. And treatment includes medications that slow the progression of the disease, although these medications are probably as well have had some success in slowing the progression of it, but certainly it still becomes a progressive situation for the person that has multiple sclerosis. Strokes, we've mentioned these before in our discussion of the circulatory system, and it results in disruption of the blood supply to the brain, and this can occur from two major forms. One is a hemorrhagic, which is a bleeding in the brain due to leakage from small arteries that have been damaged somehow, or for some reason have spontaneously caused a hemorrhage. And then you have the ischemic type, which is a sudden loss of blood supply in the brain due to a thrombus or thromboembolism. So symptoms, they depend on the area of the brain tissue that's affected, but usually includes some degree of paralysis and aphasia, which is a loss of speech. So treatment depends on the type of stroke. Ischemic strokes, they can be treated with drugs that help to dissolve the clots, and These, unfortunately, they cannot be used to treat a hemorrhagic stroke. But if administered on time, and that's why a person who is suspected of having a stroke, if they're administered proper treatment, the sooner the better. In that you can minimize the damage to the particular part of the brain if treatment is administered quickly. Meningitis. We mentioned that the brain and the spinal cord have 3 layers of meninges that surround them, and meningitis is an infection of um, these meninges, and it's caused by bacteria or viruses that have somehow accessed the meninges after infecting the blood, the middle ear, or the sinuses. Can be life-threatening if not treated quickly, and symptoms often include very stiff neck, high fever, and headache, although not so much necessarily with viral meningitis. So generally speaking, the bacterial meningitis usually causes more severe symptoms in that way. The diagnosis is confirmed by analyzing a sample of cerebrospinal fluid obtained in the lower part of the spine, called the lumbar region of the spine. Vaccines are available to prevent meningitis caused by bacterial. So the Haemophilus influenzae and the Neisseria meningitidis. So those vaccines are available, and probably another vaccine highly recommended because meningitis can be transmitted quite easily from one person to another. So this is another vaccine that has likely saved many lives. Prions. Uh, this is an infectious protein, and it's not quite the size of a virus. It contains less material than a virus actually does, but can cause several fatal brain diseases in humans and animals, such as Kuru, the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, and fatal familial insomnia. Some of the animal diseases they cause are the scabies and mad cow. So what happens is you have an accumulation of abnormal prions in the brain, and it causes the nerve cells to die. And what happens is you get these large holes that form in the brain, which are referred to as a spongiform type of changes. And you can see that there is an image of just a light microscope image of some brain tissue that's been affected there. And it can be spread by eating infected tissues or through transplantation of tissues or organs from an infected individual. That's why there was such a scare with this as far as the mad cow goes, because of the ability of it to be transmitted even much later to an individual, and it's very difficult to track as well. So the spinal cord then, spinal cord injuries, these can result from car accidents or other trauma. Fortunately, we have seen the numbers of these decrease dramatically over the last several decades, and this is likely due to a number of factors. For example, more education in terms of the dangers with diving. Also, fewer of these types of injuries from motor vehicle accidents, likely through seatbelt use and other safety restraint devices in vehicles, such as the airbags. So there has definitely been a real decrease in the numbers of these over the last number of decades. So the resulting disability, if it does occur, though, is usually permanent, since there is little to very little regeneration in the central nervous system. And so the location as to where it occurs, that's going to produce various effects. So for example, if it's in the middle back, then you'll have paralysis of the lower body and legs. Injury to the neck, of course, is going to affect more of the body, and where a person is rendered quadriplegic. ALS, or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, has also been called Lou Gehrig's disease after the famous baseball player who developed the condition as well. Also, another very famous individual who unfortunately contracted the condition is Stephen Hawking, and he's lived a whole bunch longer than most people have with this condition. Thankfully, he's still able to contribute to the field of science. Um, but a small portion of these are believed to be genetic. Symptoms include weakness or tremors that start in the limbs and then gradually involve larger muscles nearer to the body core. Most people pass away, unfortunately, from this within about 5 years due to failure of the respiratory muscles. Cerebrospinal fluid of people with ALS, they have higher levels of the neurotransmitter glutamate, which can be toxic to neurons, but not too much more is known about the condition at this point. Then we have Guillain-Barré. This is an inflammatory disease that causes demyelation of the peripheral nerve axon. So the rapid transmission of nerve impulses in the peripheral nerves depends upon myelin from the Schwann cells, and so if that gets messed up with, then the peripheral nerves cannot function the way that they need to, and so this results when antibodies formed against bacteria or viruses unfortunately mistake myelin as also something foreign and attacks the myelin. So treatment includes plasmapheresis, so the patient's own blood is removed from the body and treated to remove the harmful antibodies and then returned to the body. Fortunately, most people make a full recovery from this within 6 to 12 months. Then we have myasthenia gravis. This is an autoimmune disorder in which antibodies are formed that react against the acetylcholine receptor at the neuromuscular junction of the skeletal muscles. So antibodies, they bind to the AChR, these receptors, and they block binding of acetylcholine, preventing stimulation of muscle contraction. And symptoms include weakness of the muscles in the eye that eventually spreads to the face, the trunk, and the limbs. And treatment includes immunosuppressive drugs and inhibitors of acetylcholinesterase. And also plasmapheresis can be used to remove harmful antibodies. So that concludes our exploration of the nervous system.